Hello, everyone. Welcome to How to Build Responsible Generative AI Solutions at Scale with Noelle Russell. My name is Chloe Norwood, and I'm the Field Marketing Specialist here at Visible Thread. Before we begin, I'd like to note the related free content box on your screen. We have included some free assets for you all to check out. There will be a Q&A throughout this session and towards the end, so feel free to submit your questions throughout the presentation. And now I will pass it over to Noelle.
Amazing. Thanks for having me. Thank you, Chloe, for the wonderful way to get us started. I'm really excited to be here. I'm actually coming to you live from Las Vegas. Just this week, I was presenting at the International Builder Show for the National Association of Home Builders. I was one of their keynotes launching the AI track here. And it was so interesting because it's not where you often would think about, I don't know, at least some of my use cases didn't immediately fall into the building and construction area, but it just goes to show AI truly is for everyone. So what I thought would be nice is if I could invite a friend of mine to actually help introduce me, nearly Noelle. So here it goes.
I am nearly Noelle, a synthesized avatar, here to help with the introduction. Get ready to meet the incredible Noelle Russell. She's not your ordinary technologist. She's a game changer. With her entrepreneurial spirit and expertise in conversational AI, generative AI, and language models, Noelle has revolutionized the tech industry. But here's the best part. Noelle is so much more than her professional achievements. She's a true inspiration for balancing work and family life. As a wife and mother of 6, she embodies the definition of courage and determination. Get ready to be blown away by Noelle's spectacular journey. Join me in welcoming the phenomenal Noelle Russell.
That's amazing. So I want to share with you, I like watching it because of course it's nearly Noelle. So this is a deep fake I built. Took me about 2 minutes to create, and it was provided as part of a free service that HeyGen offers, or at least it was free when I did it. I hope it's still free, but it's called an instant avatar, and every one of you can do it. Though I always say it is right on that line of awesome and like creepy. So amazing. Thanks, Maria. Yeah, so cool. And thanks, Maria, for chiming into the chat. So I do want to invite all of you who are listening, go ahead and chime into the chat. I will talk to you about it. If you have questions as we go through, I'm going to keep an eye on it. I want this to be as interactive as possible. This session is all about what I've learned over the last 10 years in this space. And of course, on your screen right now, you'll see a QR code that will take you to my LinkedIn page. And if you would like to, of course, you can follow me, but I have lots of followers. I prefer connections until they tell me I can't do that anymore. So go ahead and click the 3 dots and connect with me live. It'd be great because then we can actually communicate and you can ask me questions and I can respond and things like that. So connect with me on LinkedIn. It would be amazing. So great to see all of my friends here. Thank you. But yeah, so I think we're in such an interesting world because just a year ago, I was trying to build deep fakes. I had a different deep fake on Synthesia, the Synthesia platform, and it wasn't awesome. But the biggest difference was actually, it took me a same amount of time, about 2 minutes to create my Synthesia one. However, the Synthesia one did not deep fake my voice. And I was actually genuinely surprised when HeyGen came back a few minutes later and was like, here's your avatar. And it actually sounded like me. And so what that encourages us to think about is that, yes, this technology is moving extremely fast, but the best way for you to really understand it is to use it. Many of you know, for those of you who are already in my circle, I talk a lot about learning by doing. And so that's our first homework assignment. Take some notes, go out to HeyGen and build your first instant avatar. Just try it, even if you never use it for anything. It's just, I think, very useful to see the nuances. Some people, it's able to do really well. Some people, not so much. So amazing. Wow, we are all over the world from Cork and UK. Thank you all for joining. This is so fantastic. So I always like to start the session talking a little bit about me and what I do. And who I am. I have, as the introduction mentioned, I do have 6 kids. I always like to let that sink in that, yeah, much of what I do is special, but that is probably the most special thing I get to do in this world. And the reason that I'm on this journey of responsible use and responsible AI at scale is because my firstborn son, Max, was born with Down syndrome, and he's there in the pool. And he really motivated me. I mean, he's about to be 19. I can't even believe it. But in his 19th year, I just remember over the last 2 decades, all I wanted to do was work for companies that would move in this direction of accessible tech. And how would he be able to fit in a world that, we have all this technology, how do we use it to help him? And that motivation drove me to work at some of the best companies, because it turns out artificial intelligence, at least in the last 10 years, was very much driven by a lot of the accessibility work that these companies were doing. And so I was lucky in that sense that I ended up at Amazon as a cloud architect about 10 years ago. And I got an email from Jeff Bezos. Okay, it wasn't to me per se, it was actually to everyone in the company, but I felt like he was speaking to me. And in that email, it invited me to become part of a new team. And that team was the Amazon Alexa team. And I do have a device in my room. I'm in the Wynn hotels in Las Vegas. And fun fact, like 10 years ago, maybe 9 years ago, when I was on the Alexa team, I came here to Vegas to help install 1,000 of these devices in this hotel. They're not the same devices. They've been upgraded to the cute little circle Echo Dots. But oh my gosh, it's so cool to see the impact of technology. And you have the opportunity in what you're about to learn today to do the exact same thing, to jump in, both feet, arms flailing into the world of AI and figure out how you can use your own personal life experience in order to drive innovation in an area that you care about. Oh yes, thanks, Christopher. The question was about the app that I used at the beginning, and that was HeyGen, HEYGEN. Definitely go out and play around with it. I thought it was really interesting and fun and very educational. I will encourage you, though, once you do build your own instant avatar, write a LinkedIn post about it, tag me so I can share it with my friends. So I also have, I host a couple of podcasts. One's called Good Morning AI, where I go to events all over the world and I talk about the events, I talk about the topics, I take a walk around the expo hall so you get to see through my eyes what's happening in the world of artificial intelligence. And I also care a lot about mindful leadership. And so I host the Lamplighter Leadership podcast, which is all about how to use, lamplighting, which literally is what we're all about to do. You're going to learn something. How do you just shine a little bit of light in an area that maybe the rest of the world isn't thinking about, and how important as a leader that is. So amazing. Thank you. Awesome. And thanks so much for chiming in. We got Virginia Beach and Pittsburgh in the house. What? So I'm in Las Vegas, but I actually come from South Florida, Fort Lauderdale area, actually. So it's so great to see you all. All right. So the next thing I want to, of course, I always like to mention, I've got lots of awards over the years, and it's been amazing, a great ride. But I will share with you that these awards were not given because I did anything, I don't think uniquely, special, other than I asked really hard questions at really important times. And so many of you are like this potentially, right? You might be at work and you might see something happen and you'd be like, why? I'm not sure we should do that. Well, I was the person who'd be like, excuse me, we should not do that. And so as a result of that, I got lots of ethics and responsible AI awards, being on teams like Alexa, at Microsoft AI, helping build cognitive services, at IBM, at Red Hat, where I was driving change through just being a great questioner of the status quo. And I think if you're called to question things, AI is a beautiful world to be in, because your questioning can turn into a product change or a feature update that can change that product or that service for everyone who will use it. And I think it's really incredible and important. Now, I always like to start with this quote too. Many of you have heard me say it, but it's such an important story. I actually got this quote from Jeff Bezos. He sent it out on Twitter back in the day before it became X. And he said it's on his refrigerator. And he actually put it on his refrigerator and he said he had his kids look at it every day. So I'm going to read it with you and then I'll tell you why it ended up being so powerful for me. So what is success, right? I love that Jeff Bezos and even Satya Nadella and Arvind over at IBM all have referenced this quote at some point. So I love that they're thinking about how to measure success. That makes me happy, right? But what is success? To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics, and endure the betrayal of false friends. To appreciate the beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, that is to have succeeded. And I love this. When I first uncovered this quote, it was represented as Ralph Waldo Emerson had come up with it. And Ralph Waldo Emerson, great guy, poet laureate, metaphysician, pretty popular. You could Google him, like he's known in the world. But I remember getting off stage one day and an older gentleman came up to me and he was like, "You should look that up." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Just go research that quote." And so I went, and not on page 1 or page 2 of Google, but on page 3 of Google, I ended up finding that it wasn't Ralph Waldo Emerson who wrote this, but actually Bessie Anderson Stanley. And over the years, decades, her lineage was lost. And it became a bit of a token or maybe a monument to like the integrity of the work we do as data scientists, data engineers, and really all of us that are moving into the world of AI. Because we're going to get presented with nice quotes, great stories, beautiful images. And I now always come to these new, amazing things. And while I love the excitement and the enthusiasm, you could tell I'm enthusiastic about most things. But now I have this voice in my head that says, who wrote that? Right? I have this philosophy, save the Bessies is what I say. Like, how do I hold and maintain the lineage of where the information comes from that gives me the opportunity to build good stories, especially in the world of data? And I often will say, kind of in jest, but maybe not, that you're, as a company, collecting data and using that data to provide incredible value to your customers. Every company is kind of one acquisition away from the Death Star. Right? Like, you never know where you're going to be. And so it's extremely important that you save the Bessies in the work you do, protect the lineage, create processes, guidelines, guardrails, anything you can do to protect who gave you that data, how they gave it to you, the context in which they gave it to you. We're working now through blockchain. I don't know how many of you remember blockchain, but we're still moving through the spirit of blockchain to protect the lineage of our creators, but the creators that are giving us this data, but it's still a bit off. We're not there yet. So a lot of this will come down to the data scientist in the room, the project manager in the room, the user experience researcher in the room, the financial expert in the room who's going to say, where did we get that data? How did we find it? So interesting to think about the world in this way, because we get all excited when we see cool things like my video. But immediately when you see something, you should think to yourself, it's that concept of trust, but verify, right? Everything we see, sure, you can trust it initially, maybe, but verify that it is what it is and it came from a good place and that the data was acquired in a conscientious and responsible way. Right now, because there is no regulation for this, the regulation sits on us as the builders, as the consumers, and all of us actually sit in both of those courts. So I encourage you to think a little differently as cool things are and new and exciting things are brought into your awareness. I encourage you to kind of just get in the habit of asking, well, I wonder where that came from. Like, scroll down to the bottom and look for the fine print of who sponsored the data, who sponsored the story. I often make a joke about chocolate, right? Like, I love the study that says I can eat as much chocolate as I want because it's actually good for me. And then I scroll down to the fine print and it's sponsored by Hershey's in Pennsylvania. Shout out to my Pennsylvania peeps. So, you want to be thoughtful and intentional about how you're using the data, but also how that data might be using you. So what I've realized over the last, and this information has actually come from probably a decade of working with executives. I love executive briefings. I am in executive briefings. I did hundreds of them for Amazon hundreds of them for Microsoft, where I'm sitting with executives. And over the last 2 years, and now I own my own company, right? So I now run the AI Leadership Institute. And in the AI Leadership Institute, we do a lot of the same thing. I go to executives, a lot of them I'm friends with over the years, and I'm helping them kind of figure out how to harness the enthusiasm inside of their organization for AI into something practical and real. And what I've uncovered over hundreds of conversations in just, I'd say, the last 12, 15 months, the executives ask all the same 3 questions. And I'll encourage you, again, if you run into some questions as we go through, you want to know a little bit more, we're going to save a few minutes at the end for some questions, or I might just answer them right away in the talk. But don't hesitate to throw those right into the chat. You can put them in Q&A too, but it's easier if you throw them into the chat and I can see them there. And hey, what? Davey's in the house, Clearwater, St. Augustine, Orlando. Oh, I'm going to be in Orlando soon. I just like to say hi to all my friends that are here. So thank you all for being here. Amazing. So these 3 questions basically boil down to how, where, and who. So let me break it down for you. Number 1, the number 1 question I get, and it is the first question, and I actually am a bit, I don't know, happy that it's the first question, because this wasn't the case 2 years ago. Executives are asking, the number 1 question they are asking is, how do I do this safely? And I'd like to believe that they're saying, I don't want to hurt anyone. But what they're really saying is, I don't want to end up in the news. How many of you saw like the Wall Street Journal situation with Air Canada? I think it actually got a press cycle. So I think it was in a bunch of areas. But poor Air Canada, right? Or think back last year to Samsung, or, I mean, goodness, I have a Google alert that sends me an email every day on AI gone wrong. And today it's mostly ChatGPT and GPT chatbots gone wrong. But I have an alert, and every day I get stories of companies who've just failed. And that's really more what these executives are asking. Like, how do I do this safely? How do I, yes, of course, protect my customers and my employees, but how do I do it in a way that doesn't, hurt my brand, hurt my company, hurt my business? And what we found out is that the number 1 way to do that is actually create an internal sandbox. Some of the people on this call are specialists at this, but having the ability to create an internal sandbox. I often will say, whatever the name of your company is, add the word GPT on the end and build one just for you. What that means is that it's not a public-facing GPT. It's inside your company. I'm a Microsoft MVP in AI, which means I get early access to a bunch of cool stuff. Not everything I can share with you, but I was an early member of the GitHub Copilot team during COVID, right? Before we even thought it would be cool. We were just trying to make developers happier and more productive at that time. But as part of that journey, I was part of the OpenAI launch. I got to be part of all of this. And what we uncovered was most people think that in order to use this technology, it has to somehow hit the internet. And the reality is there's multiple ways to do this in a way that it doesn't. And creating, I think one of my favorite features of the new AI Studio and Microsoft is my ability to connect it to a dedicated data source, a corpora that I have chosen, and train the model only to access that information. There is a new role, a new job function that comes into play here called prompt engineering. You might have heard of it or you might have seen it. I will tell you, though, that a lot of people will tell you prompt engineering is kind of the new thing, the new role. I actually believe a little bit differently, that every one of us is a prompt engineer. And what that means is that every one of us is going to need to learn how to prompt every day. Every tool is like all of our tools, Microsoft, Google, Workspace, is that what it's called? But all of these productivity tools we use in our day to access our calendar, our email, our PowerPoint presentations, all of them are going to have chatbots or text boxes inside of them saying, what would you like me to build? And the better you are at articulating what you want, the better those tools will work for you. So everyone's a prompt engineer. Yay! You can add that to your LinkedIn profile, increase your salary by, I don't know, 100 grand. Okay, I'm joking a little bit about that. But you are going to need this skill, and every role will become a prompt engineering role in the future. And that combines with how do you build this internal sandbox? You're going to need to first create a dedicated space, but then second, have some people who understand the business and have clarity of thought around what the business needs in order to build and train the model to answer the right question at the right time for the right person. And it's not a trivial task. It's relatively simple because the tech is actually not that hard. You're leveraging a model that's already been built. But the nuance is in actually tying that to your business. And your business is going to have specialization in finance or I mean, I work a lot in healthcare. Like that domain expertise is what makes models shine. And that domain expertise you can't make up. Or at least we don't want it to, right? To the nod to the hallucinations that these models will do if you are not extremely precise in how you build them. So let's go to the second question. Where do you do this? So imagine, if you will, I'm talking to an executive and they're like, oh my gosh, how do I even do this safely? And I'm like, oh, no worries. We can create a company GPT and we can put it inside your firewall and we can point it to your own data. All is good. Now they're ready to go. They've got a sandbox. They can start innovating, but they have 900 use cases. Like, and it's easy to do, right? I remember being at Accenture and we sent an email out to the company saying, if you have an idea, send it to these 3 people. And I was one of them. And I got thousands upon thousands of people being like, ooh, we could use it for this and this and this. So now it's not a matter of what can we do? It's more a matter of what's the right thing, the right thing to do. And so in that, pardon me, in figuring that out, I have a really quick rubric that I use. And I do this in an AI assessment with people who work with me today. But in this assessment, the very first question, and it's maybe different. I actually think AI is a bit of a soft skill, right? Because the first thing you're going to need to do is figure out, what do you want? And what do you want is often tied into the core values of your organization. So that's the first question I ask. What are your core values? Once you have your core values, then you can decide, okay, now that I know what's important to me as a business, that's going to create a much smaller subset of use cases, because a bunch of stuff is not going to be directly aligned with your core values. Like, it's just going to be cool that you want to do it. So instead, let's say, okay, let's only take those use cases directly aligned with the core values of our company. Now that you've got a slightly smaller list, you can now move into the next one, which will weed out a bunch, which is, what do we perceive as risky for our company? And every company has different levels of risk. I was speaking to the farmers out in Winfield United, the largest dairy conglomerate of farmers in the world, I think, but certainly in the United States. And their brand, Land O'Lakes, is precious. I don't know how many of you know Land O'Lakes. I'm a huge fan. I didn't know this either, but Land O'Lakes is in Cheeto dust. Did you know that? So most of us have experienced Land O'Lakes products. Maybe not today, but at some point in our lives. But the fact is that they care a lot about their brand. And so they don't want to do anything that's going to damage that brand. So all of a sudden, anything that was customer facing, anything that was brand impacting immediately dropped off the list. And now they were really surfacing use cases that were a combination of what their core values were and what they thought was risky. And that cross section created a new list of use cases, much, much smaller than the original. Sometimes we get down to less than 10. Sometimes at this point, we're still at over 100. Once we get there, though, the most important question is next. What's hard to do? Most people do not know the answer to this question. This is why we have consultancies who have built this before. People like me who have built it before can come in and be like, so that's hard. Don't do that first. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means in the spectrum of how do you get going? How do you build momentum? How do you define success? It's better to start with a use case or a few use cases that align with your core values, are not very risky, and that are easy to do. And there are plenty of them in the world of generative AI. And they might not all be in marketing and content generation, though huge. I was just on stage with May Habib. She's the CEO of Writer. And they do so much in the world of marketing, content generation, even internal organizational information architecture. Like, that's a whole area that you could focus on. Or you could think about back office. You could think about how the world changes for people who have to manage emails or RFPs every day, or Excel spreadsheets. Like, how do you just reduce the friction? Satya Nadella calls it human drudgery. How do we remove human drudgery? And here's what happens when you do decide to do that. And I'll give you an example. I was a couple years ago, I got to go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I know in your mind, you might be like, maybe not so technical. But the Metropolitan Museum of Art had just released a bunch of art in the open source art, right? So that you could use that imagery to train models. Now, at that time, though, I was bringing in about 15 data scientists from MIT, and we were going to do a hackathon. So the curators from the Met meet the MIT data scientists, and we all sit in a room. And almost a full day went by, and it was like an awkward high school dance where people wouldn't talk to each other. They were kind of like already decided that they didn't need each other. But then magic happened. And the way that that magic happened was a question I will encourage you to ask as you embark on these projects. Go to the person you are trying to serve. Maybe it's your customer, but maybe it's the call center rep, right? Maybe it's your sales representatives. Maybe it's your inside sales reps. Maybe it's your account executives, whoever it is. Figure out who you're going to try and help with the AI solution you're thinking about, and then just go ask them, what hurts you? What hurts you every day? What do you wake up and wish there was an app for that? What do you wake up and go, I should not have to do this. It's dumb. If you build trust with your person that you're, or the constituency of people you're trying to serve, and you build that trust enough for them to actually tell you what they hate about the thing that they're doing, they will give you amazing use cases for AI that does not replace anyone's job, right? It actually helps people do their job better. Those curators at the Met didn't go away. We built 17 AI projects for them. At the end of that hackathon, they hugged us goodbye. I was like, this is amazing. We were like family. And that's what happens with this AI technology. Yeah, you could do really cool, amazing things that are earth-breaking and, glass shattering, or you could just help people live their lives better. You could help them not be frustrated in their day, reduce friction at a scale never before seen. So use cases, as I mentioned, I think it's really important to start with, what do you want? Who are you as a company? What do you think is risky? And then figure out what's hard. And of course, I'm happy to help you. So if you have questions about this or want to have an AI assessment with me, you are happy to ping me on LinkedIn, and I will have a conversation with you about how you could do it. It's a pretty fun ride. But here is, I think, the most important question, but maybe sadly, it is often the last question that I am asked. In the sea of questions I get, it's usually at the end of the conversation where they're like, wait. What about our workforce? And I will tell you transparently, a year ago, a lot of companies were like, they saw dollar signs. Wait, this AI could remove jobs and we could have less FTEs do the work. I will tell you that a bunch of companies laid off people. And when they did that last year, they cut into the muscle of the organization that they would need when all of this abundance is occurring. Right now, we need more people in an organization because our funnel, our ability to serve clients and our ability to serve our customers is growing. We can now speak in up to 140 languages. I just had a great idea. Hey, Jen, I should totally have it speak 3 languages in my intro. Right? Wouldn't that be cool? And it's not hard to do if you go play around with it. It's literally a button I press. Button pressed, and now people in different areas of the world can understand what I'm saying in a language that they're comfortable with. This is going to change everything, right? This will change everything. And what happens when you have this mindset of how do I cut expenses, you end up losing the opportunity that comes with the different question. How do I grow my business? How do I grow this area of the organization? How do I grow what I'm personally doing in my life? So I think it's really important to not see, yes, of course, you can always see a glass half empty and look at, how do I cut expenses? But eventually you cut so deep that you can't take advantage of opportunity when it arises. So now, good news, I think, for you and me, is that the world has shifted. Even in the last 6 months, CEOs are no longer, how do I cut expenses? Now they're very tuned into, wait, how much GDP is going to be added in the next 3 to 5 years with this technology? Trillions of dollars will be added to GDP, according to McKinsey. Trillions. So how do I tap into that? And that's a much more interesting and exciting question. So how do we tap into it, right? That's usually where I go. How do we tap into it? If we think about our workforce, the number one thing I always like people to kind of maybe remember, do you remember Six Sigma? Like the Lean Sigma methodology? It's never been a better time to think about tasks versus roles. And it goes right back to the drudgery I mentioned before, right? You have human drudgery, right, that happens where every day we go and we're like, wow, I really wish I didn't have to do this email nonsense, or I really wish I didn't have to like build this PowerPoint deck. I wish I could just say it and it would get built for me. This is the dream, right? Of voice to technology. I want that to work. But here's the most important part of that is that if your workers, if the workforce, if we as leaders, if we don't know how to articulate our needs to that machine, it won't build good things. It'll actually waste time instead of increasing productivity. So there is a learning curve. I learned this also during my time at Accenture. I helped build the initial generative AI practice. And the first thing I did in January is I set up, and you could do the same thing right now for your own organization, or I could help you, but you could set up a webcast every morning for 2 hours. I taught prompt engineering in January of 2023. No one knew it was coming. And I'm like, just hop on. And I remember I was at Microsoft. So I had just learned all about this over the last year. So I felt pretty confident. But here's the thing, like, it's not enough for you to learn this. It's so important for you to now go teach it. So your team, teach it to your team if you already know. If you don't know, find someone who can teach it to you, and then you teach it to your team. But every worker has to understand how to articulate what they want into a model. That is the future. The good news is that they can get a lot of practice in, there's this guy's name's Chris Voss. He's, I don't know how many of you know him. He's a top negotiator, lead negotiator, best negotiator in the world, wrote a book about negotiation. But one of the things he says that I actually use now as a personal principle is he says, use low stakes situations to test high stakes activities. And I love this idea. And what that means is that use low stakes environments like ChatGPT on your phone. Use that ChatGPT on your phone to help you with dinner or help you figure out the best way to politely decline an invitation to a longtime friend, or right, like use it every single day because it'll help you hone the skill in a low stakes environment. You're not asking about company data. You're not using, patient information. You're not using financial transactional data. You're just using it yourself. But that skill you gain in communicating to a machine, I think that's one of the reasons why I'm better at this than most, because I've been talking to my Alexa device. I've been talking to that device since 2013. So I have really good experience about how do I, massage what I say to get what I want. And these models we're learning today are exactly the same. So I would encourage you today, if you haven't done it yet, to leverage it inside of the tool. And actually, if you use a generative model, go ahead and throw in the chat which model you use, whether it's ChatGPT or maybe it's an image tool. Like, throw in the chat so I can see how many of you maybe have used some of these tools in the past. So great to see you. Thanks, Emily. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Amazing. Uni. Good to see you, Carrie. Thank you so much. So it's really, I think, extremely interesting to be in a world. Yes. So many of us are using like ChatGPT, but a lot of us realize like Copilot's right inside tools we're using every day. Getting good at that is amazing. One thing I did personally, just life hack, I actually have I use it for my personal email. I use Outlook and the whole 365 ecosystem for my personal email. So I can do things, again, low stakes. I'm not using my business email. I do it in my own low stakes environment. I play around with it with people I'm emailing every day in my personal life. And then I can use the skills I gain in doing my personal stuff in order to make myself better at work. And the transformation, right? The transition of those skills is highly lucrative. So I'd encourage you to do that. Yeah, summarization. Awesome, Ali. Awesome. Ali, great. Oh, what up? But yes, using it for summarization, using it to reword things. Oftentimes, I will quickly just draft it out. Oh my gosh, here's another life hack. Maybe I need to name them differently, like chat hacks or GPT hacks or something. But one of the things I also do is I use the microphone on my phone to talk to GPT, and I will just say something and ask it to think it through with me, right? So I will just say, oh, I'm thinking about writing this post on blah, 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 blah. Oh, I'm thinking about applying for this talk. Here's the topic I'm thinking about. What do you think I should talk about? And again, it doesn't define it for me. It just gives me some ideas. But here's what makes it special. Inside of that tool, you will see inside that tool, this thing called custom instructions. It's about to get changed to personalization. So depending on if you watch this on the replay, personalization. But when you go into custom instructions, you can tell the model who you are, how you think, what your OKRs are, what your goals are, what your leadership principles are. This is what I do. Okay. So, and I give it all the things. Here is who Noelle is. So when I ask it a question, it's giving me an answer in the context of who I am. And that has changed it for me. It is again, if you're not doing that today, I encourage you to. It is $20 a month. I don't get a dime of it, but I'd encourage you to play around. And it's $20 a month that will serve you, not just at home, but in your career. So something that I encourage you to do it as well. Oh yeah, 100%, Joe. Love the complexity that you can mitigate, especially in Excel, writing macros, even macros for PowerPoint, having it debug things. I remember I wrote a macro by myself, which I don't typically do. I'm a coder at heart, but I code in like Java and Node. I don't code in macros. Anyway, and so I totally broke it and I gave it to ChatGPT and it was able to give me a fix, which again, I'm not sure. I think I would have given up in the past. Not that I couldn't have figured it out. I just would have been like, it's just not worth it. But now I have a tool that can partner with me to close the gap on achieving the results that I want to achieve. So super amazing. Thanks, Cassandra, for chiming in. Yeah, I agree. I 100% love that feature as well. Okay, so the workforce, that's us. Honestly, it's the people that work for us. It's the people that we work for. And so how do we think differently away from how do we cut costs and remove roles into this new world of task analysis? What tasks in your day can you automate intentionally with AI? Here's another little bit of homework. If you choose to accept it, I do this every single day. I might have it here. Yes, cool. So I have a book here and every day it has a schedule. Okay, you can't really see it, but it has a schedule. I leave no white space in my day. I plan out everything I'm gonna do, task by task. I encourage you to do the same just so you know how you're spending your time. And when I say no white space, I don't mean it's all full of meetings. I just say I'm intentional about every moment that I'm awake. And when I'm intentional about that and you look at that, I take that information and you can copy and paste it. Okay, in this case, I take a picture of it and it uses OCR to actually transcribe that into ChatGPT. And I'm like, where could I use AI here? Ask it. You don't have to come up with the ways. You don't have to figure it all out. Just say, hey, here's my day. Here's what I'm doing. You could do it task by task or day by day and just say, where might I use generative AI in all of these things that I have to do? How can you help me? Just ask it. That's his job. And it will generate you some very interesting ideas, some of which you'll take, many of which you won't. And that's okay. But the ideation process and the motivation you get when you see a solution to your problem, like there's nothing like it. So I encourage you to do that as well. Awesome. So next, in the last few minutes here, I want to share with you, of course, something that's very near and dear to my heart, which is the concept of building responsibly. So we've talked about all these amazing features and capabilities, tools that you can use, but the art of responsible AI, it's not a checklist you follow. It's not a tool you install. It's a methodology, a mindset. It's a thread that you weave into every project you deliver. And many of you might know this, but there is a quote that I use all the time. And I'll see if you can finish it for me, right? And if you know it, it actually comes from a couple different areas. One is Voltaire. I don't know if you know, but he was actually the originator. At least that's what Google told me a long time ago. I think it was him. It could be a Bessie story. Like it might've been, Aunt Bertha, but I think it was Voltaire. But then more importantly, yes, awesome, great. With great power comes great responsibility. It's an amazing thing to say because not just because Uncle Ben said it to Spider-Man and it inspired us all, but because our job is to leverage this technology in a way that helps people instead of hurts them. And most of us in our day, in our world, care about something or someone. And if we align our knowledge of AI to the things that we care about, the world changes. That's how it's happened for millennia. And so I'm going to encourage you to, yes, of course, do the job you have now. And if you love it, that's even better. But also think about how can I use this technology to help every aspect of my life, right? Both work and home, both relationships and business. Lots of opportunities, but you have to be mindful and intentional about it. And it's our responsibility to do so. That responsibility ends up being very much part of kind of a core paradigm that I use today in my own life, which is around how I really think about responsibility. And at the end of the day, I can't really think about ethics because ethics is subjective. I'm often working for a client and it's their ethics I am bound by, or I'm working for a company and it's their ethics. And I hope it's good, but I don't really feel like I have a whole bunch of control when I work for someone else or I'm working for a client that their ethics are deciding what we get to do. So instead, I use a different term. I use the term accountability and holding myself accountable for the outcomes of the things that I build with this technology has really shifted what I do. It forces me now to ask much different questions at the beginning of every project. I'm that person who loves the hype cycle, right? Like I love this time where I call it day one, where everyone's excited. I call them like, I use the analogy of baby tigers, right? Everyone's got a baby tiger and this baby tiger, it's a little model and everyone's excited and it's super cute. And people come and like huddle around it. They're like, oh my gosh. But baby tigers become big tigers and big tigers, well, kill people and sometimes. So we have to be careful. And they don't have to. There's lots of tigers that have never killed anyone, but we need to be very intentional as we build this technology. The number one way I have learned to raise baby tigers, I mean, build large language models, is to ask questions in alignment with a concept I call design justice, which means you're not just going to ask hype cycle questions like, who could this help? And who could we serve? But also, who could I hurt with this? What's the worst possible thing that could happen? And you don't actually have to be the one who asks this question. You just need to be in an inclusive, diverse room full of people where someone in the room is like, do you know Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh? Right? You need an Eeyore who's like, I really think this might mess up. You need someone who's going to speak truth about what, not just the art of the possible, but the art of kind of the disastrous outcome might be. And having that information will help you design a solution that serves more people. You won't get it all right, of course, but it will allow you to see more of what you need to protect against as you build these systems and these solutions. So building responsible AI it's part of the deal. I encourage you to learn as much as you can about it so it becomes kind of like the Matrix. When you see an AI system, you're looking at that through the lens of a responsible AI ethicist, right? You are asking questions like, I wonder where'd that data come from, right? Like just at the beginning, you're going to save the Bessies and you're going to think about where did that data come from? How did we get here? What could we do? Who could we hurt? And who could we hurt is not an awesome thing. Like many times people are like, I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, I've heard people call me. Right? Like, or I don't want to be like the nagging Nelly or whatever names they come up with. But it's in AI, it's different. You are going to protect people by raising your hand and saying, have we thought about this differently? And it's a more important aspect of our teams than ever before. So if you have been one of those people and you just kind of sat back quietly going, oh, this isn't going to go well, I'm going to encourage you, hopefully motivate you to push through being quiet and actually become quite loud, because those in our industry that have been the loudest have saved lives, have changed trajectories of companies in extremely positive ways, all because someone in the room was willing to stop the train and do it right. And I think that's an incredibly important part. So I don't want to leave without letting you know a little bit about research. And if you have any questions, please throw them in the chat. Now's your chance. I'm going to scroll back through and make sure I didn't miss any questions, but it looks like you guys are just commenting with me, which is amazing. So great to see all these conversations. So if you have any questions, and I'll also look in the Q&A in just a second as we land this plane. It's been such a fun ride. But I want to share with you some of the enterprise AI scenarios that I've uncovered. And I did this with my team at Microsoft. We ended up asking a bunch of companies, hey, if you could use AI, where would you use it in the next 5 years and in the next 6 months? And so this first screen identifies where we see AI being used across all industries. but you could see areas that are specific to your world, right? Like customer intelligence, customer facing chatbots, retail intelligence. Well, okay, maybe a little bit of retail. But all of these, like, you could see why they're interesting. And these are areas where there's often a lot of friction for a user or a lot of drudgery for a worker. And so the next slide shows kind of how they came back and said, okay, if I have 6 months and $1 million, what would I do? And these were the boxes that they prioritized. And we literally did old school, like sticky notes and dot voting. So it was a pretty cool exercise. But you can see here, these are, interestingly enough, also, remember the rubric I mentioned about figuring out what to start with? In the rubric of what to start with, that last thing, is it hard? How complex is it? These solutions here end up being the least complex to solve. So if you have no idea where to start, here's a little nudge on where you might decide to go. You don't have to. There's hundreds, thousands of use cases that you can use across your industry. But this is just a hint as to where some of the largest Fortune 500 companies, about 480 of them responded to this survey. This is where they were putting their bets. And Microsoft released a report with IDC, the research company, and they said for every dollar you put in to AI, you can get 3.5 back. What? So figure out where you want to make your investment, right? Like, because now is the time. We know how to do this now, right? We can go from day one enthusiasm to day two execution and actually deliver results. Last year was rough. Like, it was kind of the Wild West. But now I've been on enough of these production projects to realize that this is achievable. And if you want help with that, of course, just reach out to me. I'd love to be friends. You saw my connection information, hopefully on the first slide. If not, you'll get it later. Or you could just Google me, Noelle Russell, AI. That's all me. And you can find me. All right. So let me see if I see any questions. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here. Oh, nice. Thanks. What? There's a job board. That's amazing. That is such a service. When you see, I get information into my inbox all the time, like in LinkedIn, asking me if I want to work for them. And of course I'm like, no, I'm good. But I don't just let it die on the vine in my inbox. I will do exactly what you just did, Angela, and I will send it out to my community. Oh, one thing I will share with you is I do have a free AI learning community full of all of my friends, and it's on the school platform. So I'm going to type it into the chat so you guys can play around. It's called I Heart AI, because I do. And I often wear that shirt on the stage, but you all can join me there and get a lot of free resources. There's also a really interesting and amazing upskilling guide available, and it goes right in line with kind of how I started. My journey into this world has been unpredictable, but one thing has been consistent. Every time I've gone into a new part of the industry, I learn by doing. I put my fingers on a keyboard and I start practicing. So this is your chance to do that. This is my QR code that'll take you to Upskilling AI. It'll allow you to join the I Heart AI community and be part of the fun. Again, it's a free community. It's just there so we can share information. It is hyper-focused on AI and productivity and the exact same 3 questions you saw here. So if that's helpful, please do. I'm gonna keep looking for, maybe there's Q&A. I didn't look. Oh my goodness. Okay, so there are some questions here. Any current standards on AI that we should keep in mind? Thank you, Raymond, for asking that. So the first question, the standards, here's what I would do, and I'm just telling you what I did, Raymond, but the first thing is look at the executive order. So the Biden-Harris administration released an executive order. I printed it because I'm old school like that, and I highlighted it and dog-eared it, but if you look through that, you could even feed it into a GPT and have it give you the highlights, right? Life hack number 5. But that executive order has lots of good stuff in it. Another thing you could do is just Google AI executive orders in the US or in the EU. And I have a whole pile of all the executive orders that have been issued by state and local governments. And the reason I like these is because they themselves didn't do that work. They commissioned the biggest and brightest stars in this area and had them contribute to the work. So you're going to get for free, because they're public entities, they have to give it to us. They're going to give you for free the standards that they use. Hopefully that's in alignment with what you're asking. Another thing though, most important question that I often ask myself when I'm building these solutions is, how do I know the right model to use at the right time? And so there is a standard for measuring those models released by Stanford. It's called HELM, HELM. I'll type it in. And if anyone has the URL, you also can throw it in the chat. But HELM, and in the HELM, or HELM, it stands for Holistic Evaluation of Language Models, and it's a benchmarking tool to help. And they even have a HELM, like a big one, and they also have a light version for your own machine. But it's amazing because it allows you to get insight into how these models are working. It's not a black box. It's not, an easy button. Like there is transparency in these systems, some better than others, but this tool and this standard that they created will help you determine, are you comfortable with the level of transparency in the models that you're using? So hopefully that was helpful. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to go back to the first question. Danielle asked, since even information can be inaccurate, oh yes, for sure, on Google, how can we truly ensure that there's truth when we verify? 100%. So I will give you guidance that Meta gave to me in a research study I was a part of a couple years ago. And they said, and NPR does the same thing, and it's harder, but create multiple sources of authenticity. In other words, identify sources you trust. I trust National Public Radio, for example, and identify those sources and double check on multiple sources, not just Google it and be like, okay, because Google's driven by ads and people can create content that looks like ads and it gets surfaced. Truthful content and false content can be presented as true and advertised to you. So it can be very confusing. So you're right. But I will even kind of increase that concern a little bit more, Danielle, by talking about how inside companies, oftentimes, like now we're using information architecture to bring data sets together inside companies. And sometimes those data sets will live in conflict. They'll have information inside of them that do not agree. So now it's not even Google that's lying to us. It's our own data. So you will have to have people on your team at Amazon Alexa. We call them the accuracy review team. You'll have to have someone who their only job all day long is to measure organizational truth. You will have to be your own organizational truth measurer. And honestly, I think there might be an app for that, right? Someone in here might have an idea to go to GPT and build a custom GPT that sources from 3 reputable areas. You, as the user, could define what your reputable sources are, and you could then, right, like that would be interesting. So anyway, lots of fun to be had there. Amazing. Thanks, Michelle, for letting me know that you use Copilot. Me too. And Denia, I hope. Awesome to see you here as well. Scott, your question is up. There are no doubt massive benefits to LLMs and Gen AI. How do we prevent the degradation of skills at the same time? Oh my gosh, I have such a good thing for this. As people use these tools, we often see degradation and loss of task knowledge for sure, which is replaced with the knowledge of how to operate the tool. Yes, in reality, we need, of course, and in reality, the knowledge of both is needed, I think is probably what you were saying. So yes, 100%. I will share with all of you maybe a tiny sad story as we finish. I think I only have one question after this. I'm gonna try to get all of them. But Facebook and Meta, it was Facebook before they turned Meta, but Meta released a study that said as people were using predictive text on their phone, that they would, when predictive text was removed from them, they would actually start writing in the style of the predictive text that they were given. They wouldn't go back to their original creative selves. They would do, which is exactly what you're saying, Scott. So this is a real concern. What I have done and what I recently did is I am helping universities and community colleges change the rubric for education. And that rubric for education needs to be discourse, public discourse, debate. So I was at George Mason University just a few weeks ago, and I did a tech duels debate. I'll type that in the chat as well. Tech duels. It's so cool. You can bring them to a school near you, or you could bring them to your company. But they give you this skill set to say, not because, yeah, it's great if a tool does it, but can you explain what it did? And would you know if it was broken? And those are all the kind of things that happen in a duel, like in a tech duel or in a debate competition. And it's super fun. So definitely take a look. Oh, wonderful. Chloe let us know that the slides will be available and recordings available. Okay, last question that I got in the Q&A is from Lisa. can review the topic about attaching your company name to a GPT. Oh, yeah. So the main reason, and this is a great way to end, so thank you so much, Lisa, for this question. If, as you move into this world, and as a company, you decide to embrace this technology, and many of you have already done this, but as you move into it, rather than using a public GPT, a GPT that hits the internet, you're going to want to set up an internal one inside your cloud infrastructure, like Azure. And once you do that, that means that you're going to build your own GPT that has data sources or data that you've defined. So you're going to say, okay, I'm an insurance provider and I want it to go against my insurance claim policies. Never hit the internet, right? Never go outside the firewall. And then the nice thing you can tell to your employees is like, look up into the URL of your browser. And if it does not say our company name, you're not in the right place. Do not use it for business work. That way it's protected, it's private, and it also allows you to have much more control over who uses it and how they use it. So this is called a custom GPT, not the same as public custom GPTs because they just did that. But this is your own corporate GPT, enterprise GPT, if you will. And it's extremely valuable because it allows you to create a safe, responsible innovation sandbox that allows you to play around with these use cases in a much safer way. Hopefully that answered your question, Lisa. If not, definitely hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll throw my LinkedIn into the chat. But what fun. I hope you guys had an amazing time with us. Thanks, Chloe, for having me, and I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Noelle, for taking the time to speak with us all and bringing high energy to today's event. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Make sure to fill out the survey on your screen and leave us some feedback. The upcoming session in a few minutes is with Fergal McGovern, CEO of Visible Thread, and Owen Wren, Vice President of Engineering, where they will reveal a first look at the new AI feature in our products. So join us on the next session, and thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.